You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. Got a question for you. Did you know that in Mississippi, there's a lot more to being a game warden than just signing up and wearing a badge? Well, today we're going to learn all about that with Brent Madden, the captain at the Mississippi Conservation Officer Training Academy.
Mississippi Outdoors is sponsored by Entergy Mississippi. Entergy is building a stronger and cleaner grid to power a brighter future and protect our great outdoors for generations to come.
You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. Today we're talking with Brent Madden, captain at the Mississippi Conservation Officer Training Academy. Captain Madden, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
Do they call you captain often?
I've been called worse, but that's captain's good.
Captain's good.
Yes, sir.
So the Training Academy, the Conservation Officer Training Academy, I think pretty much everybody listening is thinking, ask the obvious question first, Matt. What is the Conservation Officer Training Academy?
So I guess to put it in layman's terms, if you said the Game Warden Training Academy, everybody in Mississippi would know, well, that's where the game wardens get trained.
Yeah.
So it's where we train our game wardens.
And where is it?
It's in Holmes County State Park.
Okay.
Right outside of Goodman.
So when I see a conservation officer, also known as game wardens, those who are a part of the department, they've gone through the academy and passed through.
That's correct. So
is it, you probably get this a lot, it's similar to sort of a basic training type of experience?
It's a paramilitary experience. We push ups, set ups, we exercise, wake up PT every morning. If you're out of line, you'll get yelled at a little bit, and we'll correct you. But for the most part, it's pretty much the same as basic training.
Okay. When does it happen? Is it once a year, new recruits?
We try to have a class at least once a year. Typically, we try to have it in the spring, and the reason for that is so they graduate right before hunting season, and then they can hit the field under the field training program, wide open in hunting season.
Okay.
This time we had to push it to the right a little bit. We won't be starting in July, we'll start in July rather than in April, but we'll still get through towards the end of hunting season.
Okay. So this year it'll be in July.
That's correct.
Said. How many people will go through that?
We typically start with 15 to 20, and we will graduate usually 2/3 of that, I would say. We usually lose 2, 3, 4. The first 3 weeks, we typically tell people if they make it through the first 3 weeks, they've got it.
Okay. How long? So you said the first 3 weeks, but the whole program is how long?
So we break it up, and it all kind of hinges off MLOTA, Mississippi Law Enforcement Officer Training Academy, Police Academy.
Okay.
So we kind of backwards plan off the starting days of that. And we try to put at least, so our academy is 13 weeks. We try to put at least 8 to 10 weeks of our academy on the front end before they go to MLOTA, Police Academy, which typically works out really well for us because usually the ones that we send end up with the top honors at that academy. And then whatever we don't finish on the front end, we finish when they get done with Police Academy.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get it all straight in my head. So 13 weeks at the Conservation Officer Training Academy. Right. Makota.
That's right.
And then move on and go through the law enforcement.
That's right. They'll do. Well. So ours is 13 weeks total.
Okay.
I'll give you an instance. Last time they started, I think May the 6th, and they started MLOTA Police Academy, I think, in July. And then they finished that in October, and then they come back for 3 more weeks to our academy to finish up the remainder of the 13 weeks.
Okay.
So total is 6 months of training.
6 months of training before hitting the field.
That's
and here
correct.
we're ready to go. You know, what's interesting about that, I would think that there are probably people that will listen to this that it'll be a little bit eye-opening that without ever thinking about it really fully before, you thought, it's let's just say this. It's not just, okay, hey, you got the job, here's your badge, and we'll see you on Monday. It doesn't work that way.
Well, this day and time, there's so much accountability for a law enforcement officer that we do a really good job on background checks and our whole hiring process. Our hiring process is usually 3 months long. It's not one of those things where we get an application and then 2 weeks later, hey, we're going to hire you. It doesn't work that way. We do a PT test, a swim test. We make sure you've got the minimum qualifications. Then we set you up with a first round interview. If you make it through that, we start doing background checks. We send folks to your house. We do some homework on you, and then we'll bring you in for another interview. If you make it through that, typically we hire you and we give you a start date of the academy.
What is that recruiting process maybe that leads to those new trainees coming in and going through the program? Like
So our field officers do a really good job on recruiting. Say for instance, 3 weeks ago, I sent out a vacancy map where we have vacancies in the state, and we send out, the start and ending pay. We send out, things that they need to know as far as when the academy will start, when the application's open, stuff that they'll be asked. And they do a really good job. We tell them, hey, focus on these colleges, even the high schools, because, the way time flies, a high school senior will be 21 years of age and that's one of the minimum qualifications. They got to be at least 21 years old before we can hire them. Uh-huh. And they got to have at least 64 college hours or an associate's degree. It doesn't matter in what subject. They just got to have that number of hours.
Okay.
The only way around the college is if they've got 2 years of sworn law enforcement experience.
Okay. What are the numbers like recent years in terms of applicants? Is it healthy? It's
usually about the same.
Okay.
So what I usually get, and I'll get a lot of calls. I do every year. So all of our applications go through Mississippi State Personnel Board. And they'll open up, let's say they open up applications April 1st.
Okay.
Applications won't close till May 1st. I won't get those applications. I won't have a clue who's applied or anything until they've closed and they vet who's qualified, who's not, and then they'll send me a list.
Okay.
And then that's when I send out the actual real application. I'll send it via email, and I try to text them, say, hey, check your email. Mm-hmm. Out of 250 applications, I'd say that's average, 230 to 250 applications. Once I send out packets to the qualified ones, I'll probably get anywhere from 40 to 60 packets back out of those 250 applicants. So,
okay.
And then we kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm. Brent, how'd you wind up here in this role?
You talking about in training or warden in general?
Well, let's start there. Game warden in general. What led you to that?
So I was the kid that, I'm fixing to show my age, but I liked Miami Vice.
Okay.
And when I was a kid in the 80s, I wanted to be a police officer. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that's what I wanted to do. If I'd have birthday parties, and it'd have to be like police related stuff. I mean, I was that kid.
Okay.
And of course I was brought up hunting and fishing. I mean, it wasn't just something we did. It was a way of life in my house. I mean, if it was opening morning of a season, whether it was deer season, squirrel season, whatever, I mean, all the dads, uncles, cousins, we met at my grandmother's house at like 4:00 in the morning. She had homemade biscuits and breakfast and a full spread. We ate, and then we hit the woods. I mean, it was a big deal.
It sounds like Christmas or like Thanksgiving. Like it's no different from just like a holiday.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, we hunted a lot of public land then, and of course, it shows the difference than today. Mm-hmm. If you wasn't where you wanted to hunt, 30, 45 minutes before daylight, you wasn't going to hunt there because somebody else would be there.
Yeah.
But that being said, I grew up in the outdoors. I always knew, even when I was 5, 6 years old, I wanted to be a police officer. That was just my thing. Mm-hmm. My dad, we went to church with a game warden. And my dad had quail dogs. He had bird dogs. And some days he'd get out of work early, and obviously on the weekends, he'd go quail hunting during season, work his dogs. One day, one of his dogs come up missing. He got out there hunting, and it ran off, whatever. I was I think I was about 7 years old. I was a kid. And back then you couldn't hunt WMAs on Sundays. And we went to church, and my dad asked, hey, he asked the game warden, hey, we're not hunting today on the WMA, but I still hadn't found my dog. Can I go look for him? He said, well, I'll tell you what, meet me after church, after lunch, and we'll go over and look for him. This is on Caney Creek Wildlife Management Area. And anyway, long story short, we went over there, and we pull up at the headquarters and we get out and there he was. And we get up in the game warden truck and I see all these little switches and stuff and blue lights and siren. And anyway, we didn't find the dog. We rode around a couple hours looking for it. And of course, the more we rode, the bigger my eyes got. And he drops us off at the headquarters. We get in, we go home. And I said, Daddy, I said, what does he do? He said, son, he's a game warden. I said, what's that? And because we'd never been checked or anything, or I hadn't, obviously, because I was a kid. But he said, well, they're kind of like, police in the woods. They make sure everybody's hunting right and fishing right. And I was like, so they're police? I was like, and I knew that day, that's what I want to do.
That day.
That
Seven-ish.
That's how big of an impact that game warden spending time with us.
Mm-hmm.
That's how big of an impact he made.
Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
And then here you are.
Yep.
So you went into it, and to back up, you and so many others who we've gotten to talk to here that are, in the department, different roles, biologists, whatever. When they were a young person, so many stories of a dad or a granddad, somebody who's introduced them to the outdoors, which most boys, you introduce them, put a fishing rod in their hand and, take them hunting. They're going to love it.
That's
most. Right. And most of the guys, and you too, had an aha moment where you went, wait a minute, you mean I can do what for a living? And then the rest is history. That happened to you at such an early age. Yep.
So, I went through high school and college and, the opportunity arose. Of course, I was in the military and the opportunity arose and I come on in 2005 and I just hit my 20 years, January 10th. And it's like we tell people in the academy when they're applying for a job or when we go to these junior colleges and things and we tell them, when you're picking something to do for the future, don't just always go for the money.
Yeah.
Don't look at do what you want to do that can support a family, but you look for a career, not a job. A job, something that you have to do, that you do day by day. A career is something that you could do for a lifetime and never work a day. And that's what we tell people to go for is you find a career. And this has been a career.
Yeah. So 20 years in that, well, and speaking of how fast time goes by, I mean, I'm sure that seemed like a blink. When did the role of captain at the training school happen for you?
So I become a TAC officer, I think in 2016.
Okay.
I think he was talking about that earlier.
So just a little over 10 years after you'd been here with the department.
Right. And I become captain about 3 years ago.
Okay. So how does it differ, TAC officer, training academy officer, versus being the captain? How does that differ?
So when you're a TAC officer, you're basically the drill instructor or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, you're there making a huge impact. But when we don't have an academy going on, most of those guys are back in the field doing their field officer duties.
Okay.
Where when I'm not up there at the academy, when we don't have an academy going on, I'm here at the office pulling office duty, going ahead and recruiting. Something I didn't mention earlier, when they graduate 6 months of training, they spend another year on field training. So I do
in the field training.
That's right. That's
okay.
right. So I do like monthly lesson plans and tests, and there's a lot more to it than just, hey, let's go holler at them for 6 months and that'll be fun. No,
wow. 6 months, which includes law enforcement training school, and then a year in the field training.
That's right.
So, okay, again, you think about, there are probably people or maybe someone who might come along and hesitate because they think, I don't know if I could do that. By the time you're handed the keys to the truck and you're riding solo, you're ready to go.
Oh, absolutely. So from the day they show up for their PT test to apply for the job, we tell them, hey, everything we do is for a reason. And I don't cut any corners. I don't pull any punches. I tell them, hey, this is what you need to wear the interview. And I tell people all the time, it don't matter what you're interviewing for, you dress your best. First impressions are everything.
Sure.
Because in 5-minute interview, they're not going to learn much about you, but they're going to watch the way you sit, the way you carry yourself, the way you dress, and how polite you are, well-mannered. That's what they're looking at. And I tell them that. We still have some show up and wear shorts and T-shirt. But that being said, usually about week 3 or week 4, they understand, this is why I can't. So we do just like in the military, you see them walking down the sidewalk and they don't, round off a corner or cut a corner, they square it off.
Yeah.
They pivot and step. Well, 1, it builds discipline. And 2, it teaches them to walk straight up, carry themselves in a proper manner, but also it teaches them not to cut corners. Don't go the easy way. Yeah. Literally, you're not cutting that corner. Trying to think what else. When we're telling them, hey, this is what you need to do, this, and this, and we put it under pressure. The reason why we do that is when they get out in the field, they may be checking. They may have 25 hunters around them that they're checking, and they're constantly having to watch every one of them. So it's not always just bread and butter in the field, and you can just check one person at a time and carry on a conversation, and you got to get it and go. So everything we do there is for a reason.
That you say that's something I was thinking is the whole training from the perspective of nothing is uniform. Like every situation is different. It's almost like you're always going to encounter something that is maybe a little different. It's coming off a little different than exactly the way it was on the test, and training for that.
Yep.
The only way you could cover it would be with guys like you that have a lot of experience behind what you're teaching the new guys.
So we'll break it down in phases. Like the first 3 weeks is pretty tough. We don't give them any perks or anything. After that, they kind of earn their way. After that, we start actually doing some law enforcement training. By the end of it, we're doing a lot of scenarios where we've got officers, if they seize a lot of animals, or heck, I've picked up dead squirrels in the road before and put them in the freezer, and I'd have like 10 squirrels in my pack, acting like a squirrel hunter that was over the limit of squirrels. And they had to, physically pull the squirrels out of my backpack or out of my vest and say, hey, you're 2 over the limit. So we try to throw everything at, but not just that. When they get out in the field with that field training officer, so they're with a field training officer 2 or 3 months, and they learn how that field training officer works, and he's controlling everything they do in the field. After that, they'll switch to a total different field training officer because everybody works a little different. And then they'll work for that. But about halfway of that 3-month process, they start transitioning and letting the trainee, okay, what are we doing this morning? You plan it out. And then before they know it, they're planning the weeks out.
Yeah.
That way, when they get released on their own, they've already been planning their days. They've already been doing the paperwork. It's an easy transition.
In reference to those scenarios that might be hard to plan for or train for, the one-off, things that are different, whether it be dealing with water, diving, in the role of a conservation officer, you might deal with an animal like an alligator, which is much different than a typical law enforcement. How is that applied in training?
So we actually have a guy that'll bring about 10 alligators up there, and he'll tape their mouths shut, and he will be out there just teaching a class to them. They'll have alligators walking all around them, and anywhere from 4 feet to probably 7 or 8 feet long. And at the end of it, they learn how to basically restrain the alligator, tie it up, put it, because depending on what parts of the state you're in, somebody in the Mississippi Delta may do something totally different than where I'm at in Scott County. In Scott, we laugh and joke about it. In Scott County, we don't have a lot of duck hunting. Our duck hunting is opening day and roost shooting. And you go to the Delta, and that's a lot of what they deal with all season is duck hunting. So depending on what part of the state you're in, but here in central Mississippi, especially near the Ross Barnett Reservoir, we get a lot of alligator calls, and we have to know most of the time for a certain size. Yeah, we'll have to go snag them or catch them and relocate them. Another instance is, it's like I tell them, we do a PT test when we're doing the hiring process, but we also do a swim test, because I would say at least a third of the time during the year that we're on the job, we're on the water. And a lot of people don't think, the number one danger around water is obviously drowning.
Right.
So we actually devote a solid week to swim training, and we will look. That's probably the most exhausting week at the academy. Mm-hmm. They'll learn different swimming techniques, going back and forth in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They'll have to pull each other around, and also in full duty gear. It's not out there in just a t-shirt and shorts. They got their pistol belt on. They got their boots on.
In the water.
Yes. 12 foot of water.
Okay.
So we prepare them for everything that we think they're going to be faced with. Okay. Now, just like you said, Murphy always shows up. And,
right.
What will go wrong can go wrong. But at the end of it.
But it also sounds like, the mental training of kind of having an even keel and the right heartbeat to deal when Murphy's Law does kick up in that unknown, where there's no freaking out going on. You handle it a certain way. That's part of the training too, isn't it?
That's
Not just the physical part.
Well, and a lot of the ones that we hire are prior sworn, meaning they've been to police academy. They've got several years of experience in the field. And we also have to train them that, hey, most of the folks that you're dealing with in this line of duty are totally different from the folks that you're used to dealing with. Most of our folks that we deal with they're trying to put meat in the freezer. They may be just trying to have a good time, or they're trying to harvest a trophy, or maybe all of the above.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily trying to break the law. They're just, they mess up. Yeah. But, it's like we tell people in the academy, your most valuable tool is the way you talk to people. And we train them on that, how to carry on a conversation with people.
Mm. So the more I hear you talk about the training process, the broader and the more comprehensive it sounds. I think, again, I probably echo a lot of people listening to this that, boy, I didn't realize all that's happening or going on for that amount of time either. For you, you went through all that yourself, right? What about the water part of it? Being in the water, full gear, belt, and you get soaking wet. How would you describe the difference?
So the first thing that they do, they'll put them in, of course, when I say full uniform, they're wearing a t-shirt, fatigue pants, their boots, and, a gun belt with a dummy gun, stuff like that on it. It may be some sandbags to add a little weight to it.
I'm not going to soak a real.
They'll dip them in the water, and they'll get out, and they'll step on a scale to see just how much heavier they are once they get wet. And then they'll start out with a life jacket on, swimming back and forth. So we baby step our way into it before we just throw them off 12 foot of water.
Yeah.
But at the end of those 3-4 days, we've seen folks that they could dog paddle or swim on their back from one end of the pool to the next. That confidence level is just, way up here after making it through that. Because typically once they make it through that week, they're like, if I can do that, I can do anything.
What's interesting, my experience over the years too, totally different type of athletic training in sports, but we always think about the running, lifting as being the things that will exhaust you. But as soon as you get in the water, or like boxing, something you wouldn't ever think about, the boxing, your arms are up, that kind of thing, swimming, those are the things that will exhaust you faster than any. You can run, 10 miles and still be better off than swimming one.
Well, I'll add to that. So at the end of that swim week, they're obviously exhausted. They've spent 6-8 hours a day in the water. And they are beat. The last day of it, when they get back, we'll tell them, okay, y'all go change into your PTs. We'll box.
Oh, goodness.
And the way we do boxing is we will make them do, like 2 minutes of push-ups.
Okay.
We try to relate it as close to a fight as we can get it. Your adrenaline's way up here. 2 minutes of push-ups. And when they get up, put their gloves on and their headgear, they're already smoked.
Right.
Not just from the week.
Hard to even get them up.
Oh, yeah. So plus it helps control your injuries. And for 1 minute, one of them's full defense. The other one's waylaying. And then they switch. One's defense, one's offense. And then the last minute is they're boxing, both of them. And after 3 minutes, We jerk their headgear off, all that, and then it's full weapon retention. One of them tries to take the other one's gun out of the gun belt. I mean, they're tussling on the floor. They do a minute of that, and then they switch over to another minute, switching over. When they get done with that, they're done.
Right.
I mean, they are smoked. But it's realistic to, a 30-second realistic fight. I mean, you're wide open for 30 seconds or a minute, and you hear people say all the time, man, if you fight for 60 seconds, you've done something.
That's right.
And yeah.
Well, as you were saying it, I mean, boxing, I've always thought nothing will completely deplete your muscles, from any strength faster than boxing will. And you're telling me y'all are doing that in the training at the end of a week of swim training. And then after the boxing, I got to make sure he can't get my gun out of my belt.
That's right.
Which is, if we talk about real life situations, name something more important than preventing someone from taking your gun from you as an officer.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's not just that, but we try to have 2 officers a county. And obviously at some point in time, they rotate days off because you don't want to have your county unattended or whatever. So that being said, most of the time you're by yourself. So you get in a situation, which don't get me wrong, it hardly ever happens, but you get in a situation, when you're a mile from your truck, you've been looking for some bait and you find it and you catch the guy over bait or spotlight, whatever it may be, you're a mile from your truck on foot. I mean, backup's not going to get to you in 30 seconds. Yeah. You've got to be able to handle yourself.
Right.
So we try to prepare them for, and another good thing of that, whether they can fight a lick or not, but at the end of it, once again, their confidence level is like, man, if I did this, I can do anything. And I mean, from that point forward, they're carrying themselves different. They're like, man, I've got this. I rule the world. I've got this. I can do anything.
Sure. Brent, as we hear you talk about it, it's obvious that you're passionate about the career and the profession, about the role that a conservation officer is going to play. So how would you describe the purpose that you feel in what you do in training these guys and women, the purpose you get out of it?
Well, that's just it. I've always, even when I started this job, I had we didn't even have a field training program then, but my partner took me under his wing and he said, look, we're partners. He said, and we're like a brotherhood. Anything you go through, I'm going to go through. And he said, and I was a rookie, man. I wanted to write everybody I could. I mean, I was just, man, I want to get into something. He said, hey, slow your roll. He said, that's not what this is about. He said, we're here to make a difference. He said, we're not here to write, see how we can get our ticket numbers. We're here to make a difference. If we can help this guy that's, he's in between jobs and always wanting to do is spend time with his family, and he takes his kids to the riverbank fishing and he don't have a license, we're here to make a difference, not just write everybody. So that kind of dawned on me, like, there's a bigger picture to this than just wearing a gun and a badge and just, hey, I'm the game warden. It's, we're here to make a difference. When we teach hunter ed, we teach boater ed, we go to all different schools on safety days, things of that nature. And kids see us, more than just somebody with a gun and a badge. They're like, well, he taught me hunter ed. And I still remember this day, my dad took me to hunter ed, and, I still remember who taught it and all that. And he sat right beside me. And, I want to be that guy, even when I'm 70 years old, good Lord willing, and a kid, a grown man comes up to me and says, man, you taught me hunter ed, or you helped me out. You did this. And, I want to make a difference.
Like that game warden made a difference in your life.
That's right. I want to repay the favor.
Yeah. What do you think should be the message to someone listening that maybe they are a young person and, they're on the fence, that maybe they're not as sure that's what they want to do as you were, but they're really heavily considering it? What would be your message to them?
Well, obviously it would depend on their age. A lot of folks think, well, I'm 18. I can go to work right now. the 64 hours that kind of puts a speed bump in their way right there for some of the ones that want to be game wardens. But, when you start looking at the age, you're going to be 21 or 20 by the time you get done with that 2-year degree anyway. Mm-hmm. So you might as well go make something out of it. But all in all, if that's something you want to do, I promise you'll never work a day in your life. It's one of those things where I don't want to say we work our own schedule. I'm not saying that in a lazy way, but it's one of those things where, you get a truck, you get a boat, you get a four-wheeler. If I get tired of working deer hunting and I'm just sick of it, I'm sick of looking at the same people, I need a break. Mm-hmm. I'll go hook to my boat and I'll go check crappie fishing on the reservoir. Mm-hmm. I've got that option. Right. As long as I'm handling my calls and answering my calls, I've got that luxury and it's like I tell people, by the time you get done tired of working hunting season, it's over with. Mm-hmm. It's time to work boating or crappie fishing. And then by the time you're tired of getting up early in the morning, counting crappie, it's turkey season. By the time you're tired of, getting up early in the morning, chasing turkey hunters, it's time to work recreational boating. Yeah. And then by the time you're tired of that, guess what? It's dove season. So, and I guess that's why time goes by so fast because about the time you're needing a break, well, you get a break. You get a break. It's something totally different then. Yeah. So, and that's probably the best part of the job is you don't just get burned out.
Yeah. Got to ask you, do you still get to go hunting?
I knew you were going to ask that. So, back to my younger days. So, do you know what the most intelligent animal on the face of the planet is?
Oh, goodness. I was going to say Chip, but that might not be the right answer.
It probably is, but it's a human being.
Okay.
You will actually get addicted to chasing people.
Okay.
And my first 2 or 3 years, I was like, man, I don't want to take a day off.
Right.
I love this. Yeah. Or I don't want hunting season to end or whatever. What can we get into? But, it just, you eventually get in your rhythm and things start coming together and you develop into your own officer. And I do get to hunt. And it's like I tell people, the bad part about the job is, especially when I first come on, is you work pretty much every weekend and holiday because that's when everybody's off. Mm-hmm. That's when they're going to be in the woods or on the water. Yeah. The best part is when they go back to work, and I always kind of line my days off for Wednesday and Thursday because Mondays I'd go deal with court, turn tickets in, whatever I needed to do. Or go, because that's when all the tracks were fresh. I could do my homework and go see what people got into over the weekend. Tuesday, I'd handle some more paperwork. But Wednesday, Thursday, the woods have settled down for 2 days, and I'm the only one in the woods Wednesday and Thursday. Mm-hmm. So it actually plays out, for the game warden because he gets to hunt, Wednesdays, Thursday during the week when there's less pressure in the woods.
Yeah. Do you do you find that, and even in your career, there's some of that misconception out there about what the conservation officer, game warden is for? Mm-hmm. You touched on it earlier with your purpose, but do you find there's some misconception or has been over the years?
It is. A lot of people don't realize that we go to the exact same police academy. Maybe not the exact one, but we have to go through the same minimum standards process that every police officer, deputy, whoever in the state has to go through. So we're not only certified to be a conservation officer or game warden, but we have to be certified also to be sheriff's deputy, police officer, whatever it may be. We have to carry that minimum standards. Now, a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people that, especially the folks that didn't grow up in the outdoors or don't know anything about what we do, a lot of times they'll call us park rangers or something like that. They just don't know. And, we'll hear somebody tell them, hey, that's a game warden. He can do anything, but, that's not true either. But, that's the biggest misconception, I think. Another one is, all they out there doing is trying to write people tickets. And that's not true either. Yeah. That's one thing I try to instill in the cadets while they're at the academy. Hey, if somebody broke into your house and you called the sheriff's department or police department, you would expect, maybe not that night, but somebody to show up and get some details and help you with that call. it's the same way with what we do. Somebody calls saying, hey, somebody shot a deer in my pasture last night, or I caught somebody shining. They want to see you. Go treat somebody like, hey, this is something that I would want done, if I made this call.
Yeah.
And help people. That's the biggest thing. We got a special response team. We got a K9 team, a dive team. And I would say most of what they do is more along the lines of helping people, more than, whether it's looking for lost people or, bad as I hate to say it, a drowning victim or something like that. They're there to help people more than they are, to enforce the law or anything like that. So we, looking across the broad spectrum of what we do, actually going out and, citing people for infractions, whatever, is just a small fraction of what we do day to day.
Yeah. And earlier you gave the advice, find a career, not a job.
That's right.
And we might add to that, find something that you're as passionate about as Brent Madden is about being a conservation officer in wildlife, fisheries, and parks. Because, I could sit here and talk to you. I could sit here and ask you questions about it all day long because I feel like you'd be happy to answer them all day long.
Oh, absolutely. I could tell you I could tell stories all day long, but
I'm sure,
and we've all got stories. It's like I tell some of the ones that just graduate, they've already got stories that they're wanting to tell people. I was like, better get you a retirement book and start writing in it.
Start making those
you're going to forget stuff. But yeah.
Be like Kenny Payne one of these days and write a whole book all about it.
Oh, you talking about Kenny Prince?
I'm Kenny Prince, sir. Yeah, we had him here, and he's got more than he can put in one book.
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Prince. Brent, thank you so much for being here. It's been a real pleasure. He is Brent Madden, the captain at the Conservation Officer Training Academy here in Mississippi. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you outdoors.